Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of BizzTalk. I am your host, Jason Schuster from BizzTech, and today I am with Julius Solaris. Welcome back to the show. How are you doing, Julius?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Jason. Such a pleasure to be back.
Absolutely, absolutely. Last time we talked, you were with Swap Card. Now your home is hopping. Are you enjoying that experience so far?
Yeah, obviously very, very different environment, but equally exciting. Event tech is going super fast. And, I just joined Hopin a week and a half ago
Wow.
as VP of marketing strategy for their events vertical. So I'm very excited about, transitioning a company that has been dedicated to virtual events and was born with that into in-person events as well. So very exciting times. Hybrid is the talk of the day. So yeah, very, very stimulating and new challenges for sure.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, Julius, thanks so much for being here again. And again, our topic today is marketing for virtual and hybrid events. It's kind of a broad topic, but I actually can't think of a better guest to have on board here for that. So, Julius, just to remind the audience, can you give us 2 minutes? Tell them your story, where kind of your background and what led you here to where you are at Hopin now.
Totally. Yeah, I've been the founder and editor of EventMB, one of the largest publications for the event industry, which we sold in 2019 to Skift, one of the largest travel media companies out there. I've been writing and researching about the use of technology in events for 12 years now. I've sold the business in event technology as well. And I've worked for all the technology companies you can think of in marketing capacity as clients at EventMB, from Eventbrite to Cvent to Double Dutch at the time, and the old guard of pre-pandemic sort of apps, as well as the new ones into the pandemic. During the pandemic, EventMB, I planned 7 events, virtual events at EventMB, which collected north of 60,000 event planners participating. So it was incredible. You have to think that the biggest show in the industry is probably 10,000. So it was incredible numbers, and kind of changed the game a little bit and started a new narrative, new category, which was virtual events. Started to work with a lot of those companies as well in my capacity as editor. Then I made the jump and I joined the dark side of the force, as many call it. And went client side and started to work with SwapCard for a few months. And my last move has been with Hopin. Hopin, obviously, I'm sure a lot of people know about it if you have anything to do with virtual events. But regardless of what the company does, the story of the company is incredible. Johnny Bufferhut, the CEO, founded it in 2019 because he was like confined to his bed for illness, and they wanted to give people a chance to connect with events happening around the world. This is pre-pandemic, so obviously it was incredibly well positioned when the pandemic hit, because the experience that Johnny created was incredible and very respondent to the need that the market had at the time. In terms of user experience, you have to think that all of the platforms that we see today were like non-existent in March 2020.
That's right.
So incredible growth, the fastest growing company of all times in Europe.
Yep.
So
one of the fastest in the whole world, I think, period. I mean, their growth has been unbelievable. So
for sure. in the space of a year and a half, we closed $1 billion funding. So we're very excited about shaping the future of connection wherever, whatever, and however it needs to happen, whether it's online, whether it's in person, or whether it's both. I feel that at Hopin, we really have a higher objective to create these connections and facilitate these connections. StreamYard, the platform that we're using right now, is part of Hopin as well.
That's
So
right.
very, very excited about having a lot of different influences, not just the event industry, but influencers, content creators being part of the conversation. So yeah, that's a short summary. Probably went over.
Oh no worries, no worries. So I think with this topic we're going to be fine on time. So Julius, thanks for that, and yeah, Hopin's story really cool. So I'm looking forward to maybe talking to you again in another 6 months and hearing how that process has been and that growth. So let's go ahead and dive into the topic. So marketing for virtual and hybrid events. Now you've been, like you said, you've been in the marketing side. I mean, you've been in events forever, virtual events forever, and the marketing side. And right now, you're VP of marketing over at Hopin. So let's talk a little bit about what is different about marketing a virtual event from an in-person event. Like, what are the biggest differences? Maybe biggest challenges.
For sure. We're still in a different world than a regular normal world where we would have virtual events as, they used to be webinars, whatever. Even like more complex virtual events. It's not that like virtual event platforms started during the pandemic. It's actually, they've been going for like 10 years in some cases. Right. Obviously, completely different environment pre-pandemic to what we're living right now. We cannot discard what it's happening around us in terms of the impact that it has on the way we plan and market events and what we decide to do as well, right? We're not still not in a normal, in quotes, environment, whatever that will look like. We don't have the next iteration yet, so we don't know where we're going as well. We can. It's easy to assume that we're not going to go to what it used to be pre-pandemic to a certain extent, because it looks like some changes are permanent. I'm thinking about working from home. That's becoming the norm in a lot of companies. Major companies are announcing that as an ongoing policy, and that will have a tremendous impact on event planners or CMOs working with events, whether virtual or in person. So that's kind of a assumption that I want to make. We're not in a normal environment, so keep that in mind. What does that mean, though? It means that we're still, I think, facing 6 to 9 months of uncertainty, where obviously planning virtual events is not right now as planning of virtual events back in 2020, right? Where the uncertainty was much more. We're going towards a little bit more normality, and people are getting out as well. Vaccines or whatever seems to work. I don't want to take stances here because I know it's controversial, but numbers are getting better. Let's put it that way. So people are feeling more confident to go out. I've seen a number of tech events, for example, which is like a very sensible to this topic actually happening. We had SaaStr last week, major event in San Francisco outdoor with 6,000 people. A lot of events happening in Vegas as well. So, it's picking back up. To answer your question super quickly, I don't want to attend a virtual event if I have the possibility to attend an in-person event. I think this stands true for all of those that have been locked in for 18 months plus. My first need is to go back to in-person, have a party, meet people, hug each other, whatever, get to experience my community, whatever that is, and if an event sort of catalyzes a community, I want to be there in person. Okay. So obviously that's major driver to not necessarily push virtual as much. In some countries, virtual is still the only option. So there's still a lot of restrictions. Plus, we have to think that travel is not there anymore. So the international component is missing from a lot of events, meaning that big events here in the US run at 40, 50%, in terms of the usual attendance. So adapting your business model to that, it's extremely challenging, and sort of virtual component can be still needed to a lot of events to actually be out there. So what are the major differences? I think virtual events right now remain the best way to probably deliver content.
Right.
We are used now to consume content on YouTube, podcasts, social media. Virtual events is just another iteration of them. It's a better iteration of it because it's interactive, and
Definitely.
it has a more community feeling than just watching a video on YouTube and commenting on it. So I'm a fan of that delivery, but for the networking and the entertainment piece, which are the other two key needs that people have when they approach events, in person is still going to win, and therefore people will have a preference for that. So it's an important shift in how we design events right now in terms of thinking. Content goes to virtual, entertainment and networking have to be the primary need for in person. I went to an in-person event back in May when they kind of pre-Delta, when they relaxed stuff in Vegas. And honestly, like they locked us in a room for like an hour and a half to listen to keynotes and stuff like that. And I was like, what are you doing to me? Let me go. Like, I want to go and meet people. I don't want to be in a room listening to people in the dark after I've spent like 18 months on Zoom calls. So I think that respecting those needs is going to be increasingly important. And that affects all our marketing. I think the way we design the events is going to affect the way we promote our events, the way we sell tickets, the way we get registrations. So very long answer. I hope I gave a little bit of insight.
No, it was good. And I think it's important to keep in mind that while over the last 18 months, virtual has been the necessity, right? And some businesses, if they didn't adopt some kind of virtual platform, they were completely dead in the water. But that's not going to always be the case, right? We're going back to in person, which means that instead of full virtual, kind of bringing into the next topic is it's really going to be. Certainly, we'll still have virtual events, like you said. There will be some cases where it makes sense. Smaller organizers with smaller budgets, maybe events that are targeting really early stage startups that maybe don't have the budget to travel, something like that. But I think that it brings up kind of the topic of hybrid, right? So I do think that there will always be a virtual component to events going forward, not necessarily full virtual. But I think that virtual component kind of has earned its place even in in-person events. What do you think about that, Jim?
Yeah, I think you're 100% right, and I agree with that. Once again, it's a very complex topic. Unfortunately, there's no easy answer to this. I'm actually working on a big piece on that, so I'm analyzing it from a million perspectives because it's not just like every event is different, every industry is different. So with tech, with media, people that are very used to online marketing tools, virtual events is just a natural extension of their marketing mix. So it makes a lot of sense. With medical congresses, probably not as much because people need to discuss an abstract or, a poster, as they do in medical conferences and congresses where they get together and they present posters and everybody needs to come together and discuss it. So, that dynamic is not being easy to facilitate. If you think about trade shows where business needs to happen on a show floor, meetings have to happen, the trade show segment has been the most underserved by virtual event platforms so far because it's really made on, co-creation in person. And it's very tough to have that serendipitous meeting, in a virtual event platform. We're still working on creating the best tools for that. But putting that aside, there's two parts of it. Right? In-person experiences, virtual experiences. First of all, in-person and virtual. In-person, a lot of people are pointing right now at being at in-person events being the annual premium, best way to get together once a year, and then virtual, creating the touch points through the year to get the conversation going, right? We've always been talking about extending the life cycle of events for years now. We thought that social media would have helped to do that. To a certain extent, it had. Some events are tweeting or sharing Instagram pictures or doing TikToks now through the year to keep the brand alive. But there's no event as such happening, right? It was all only in person. Now we have the opportunity to make like virtual events happen through the year between 2 annual meetings and keep that sort of service that we provide as event planners present in the face of our attendees. So that's the first opportunity that we have. Multiple touch points, more meaningful touch points than just a social media post. The second part is we got to get into the mentality that some people won't be able to attend our event, right? Right now, the reason why they can't, it's probably due to travel restrictions or because they're scared of getting infected, or, you know, they're very, very strong reasons. So the case for creating a hybrid experience is very strong in that sense. But what is going to happen going forward? That's the question. Once the pandemic is over, what's the next scenario? And to me, that scenario looks like something that, you know, where sustainability is going to come back. That was the main issue of the industry pre-pandemic in 2019. And the waste and unnecessary travel that events create is undeniable. Therefore, a lot of people that actually do care about the environment, and I think a lot of more people will start caring about the environment, looking at the rate of changes that we're getting, you know, are going to question, why do I need to travel all around the world if I can just attend online? Therefore, planners will be called to arms again to offer the virtual component to their event. There's also an inclusion piece. We're living in a new era of DEI, and, you know, including people that cannot be there. I think we've lived through the most inclusive 18 months of the event industry ever, where everybody got a chance to attend events, sometimes for free, that, you know, were inaccessible for a lot of people. So that cannot be denied, and it's part of the future of the event industry, I believe, to create new business models to accommodate that. So there's a case for hybrid, meaning in-person component and a virtual component happening beyond the pandemic. Now, how that is going to happen, that's kind of like the big chat that we're having within the industry right now. Like, what are the dynamics?
Absolutely. So kind of one of the things that I'm kind of hearing from what you're saying is that opportunity for innovation is not over. Just because the pandemic is over, that opportunity for innovation in this space, in the virtual, you know, hybrid side, there's still a lot of room for growth, I would imagine.
Yeah, 100%. And those planners that think, or CMOs that think that, okay, you know, pandemic is over, let's go back to in-person, very effective, don't get me wrong, like one of the most effective B2B marketing tools are and have been events for years now in all sort of reports out there. Everybody always points at face-to-face as the most effective tool. Fantastic, but let's not make the mistake to wipe out the past 18 months and think that, okay, we're going to go 100% to in-person, because we're going to be caught in the same type of dynamic of March 2020, when people are going to start screaming and say, like, why you're not offering like a digital version of this? Why am I not able to connect to your event? Why am I cut out? And you know, those that implemented that type of perspective pre-pandemic really, really flourished during the pandemic, like big time. They had a massive competitive advantage, and I think the same is going to happen later on. So still massive opportunity to create new business models, to create new revenue streams, because, you know, we have to think that, and I want to touch a little bit on that, hybrid doesn't mean necessarily at the same time. So a hybrid experience to me means two audiences that connect. So it may be around content, but it doesn't need to happen while the in-person event is happening, right? I can watch a replay of the event. I can still engage with the community. I can still be on the platform and look at what attendees shared from the in-person events. And I can connect with them after the event is done, or I can connect before the event is even started. So the hybrid interaction is not something that needs to be synchronous. This is where a lot of people are making the mistake and discarding hybrid altogether. They think it's necessarily something, two events that need to happen at the same time. They may well be, right? but it's not necessarily the case. We're starting to think about shared experiences, hybrid experiences that sort of extend beyond the life cycle.
Right. Absolutely. Now let's. I want to bring the conversation kind of back to marketing, and I want to look at it from two pieces. We got about 10 minutes left. I think we can cover this in 10 minutes. Let's see.
Sure.
So there's two sides of marketing, right? There's bringing people to the event, bringing stakeholders to the event, right? That's a process. Something that you've had a lot of experience in. There's the other side of marketing in events, virtual and hybrid, which is the other stakeholders, which is the exhibitors, the sponsors, right? They are there to market, right? They're trying to get some type of ROI on these events. So if you could first maybe touch on, what do marketers need to do to adapt to these new styles, right? To maybe let's focus on the hybrid. I like that idea of this continuous content rather than just trying to do a whole solely virtual event. But I also would love if you could touch on, what do those other stakeholders, exhibitors and sponsors, what do they have to change when it comes to these types of events from what they're maybe used to in the past?
Sure. I think that obviously publishing a virtual event and expecting thousands and thousands of people to show up as it happened early days of 2020 is not going to happen again. Numbers are nowhere near. We're overloaded by Zoom calls and being on screen all the time. Social networks like Clubhouse that were having a huge peak a few months ago really suffered during I would say during summer, probably people more comfortable to go out. Let's see what happens during this winter. I'm keeping an eye on that because there could be a bounce back in some issues. So that goes into how easy it is to market these events to people that need to attend, right? So the virtual part, what you have to keep an eye on is people are overloaded. So if you don't have like enough reasons for people to turn out, like incredible speakers, incredible formats, breakout sessions that really connect people together rather than blasting content all the time, collaboration, heavily moderated TV show quality, that's the type of virtual events I like to attend. High production level. Like, if you're putting together a Zoom call, I'm sorry, I'm not coming. Like, unless it's like a mastermind Zoom call. And at that stage, like, I'm very interested in other peers in it. So at that stage, the platform doesn't matter. But like, it goes back to the reasons you give me to attend, right? In person, there's a new set of requirements, I believe. There's hygiene and safety requirements that you have to put in place to make it marketable. So, people want to feel safe. So what are you doing to feel safe? A lot of events are going out, saying, you got to have a test, you got to be vaccinated, but then they don't do necessarily nothing about it to check if people are actually, and that goes kind of against, I think, a little bit what the job of event planners is, which is taking care of the safety and enjoyment of people. So a little bit controversial there. I think a lot of companies are still figuring that out. So I want to give them the benefit of the doubt in that they're still working on it and trying to find the best model. But safety, once we're in and we're safe, give me a party, right? So make it, networking driven so I can be there and I can go there. Where does it make sense to, on a marketing level, to make it happen? Large cities where travel is not as necessary as, smaller cities where everybody needs to travel. Obviously, the US has a competitive advantage right now. It's like domestic travel is allowed, and therefore people are more comfortable with it. But, we're always shooting for like 50, 60% of the usual capacity if you're lucky, right? There's still a lot of people not comfortable with traveling. So can you make your event happen? Can you make a profit or break even with those numbers? That means you have to really rethink all of your structure program and give reasons to these exhibitors that are desperate for the in-person connection to be there. Obviously, virtual becomes a great extension of it because you can add more, not only like the physical booth, but also the virtual expo area, the connections, the content opportunities online, that sort of augments the perception of the value that you're offering to exhibitors, right?
Right.
But obviously, in person, you got to be able to facilitate these meetings between the sponsors, exhibitors, and the attendees. Meaning, like, let's throw everybody in a room and expect that these connections happen. That didn't work before the pandemic, but there was so many people around that it kind of did work. But right now, the traffic is not there, so I'm seeing a lot of shows with these beautiful expo areas, and there's nobody there. It's like they're busy, like being at the buffet, talking to each other. The last thing they want to do is like, oh, let's go and being pitched by a salesperson. So,
Right.
yeah, and this goes back also. I don't want to be incendiary here and be fired on my second week at Hopin, but like what I want to say is that I love face-to-face. Is the best tool to engage with people. But let's not pretend that face-to-face was perfect pre-pandemic, because it wasn't. We had a lot of problems with content that you don't want to hear to, 10 points, fonts, presentations, pitches from sponsors that were boring, panels made with no diversity whatsoever, waste created by, humongous events in, with consumption of plastic and all the worst things you can think about. It wasn't, I mean, it is my family and my community, but that's why I care about changing it as well and making it better. And I think now is the time to start having that conversation. Like, once we go back to in person, how are we going to go do it differently than what we used to? Things have changed.
Definitely. I love that. And yeah, you're right. In-person events weren't perfect before. There was a lot of problems, and virtual, maybe the pandemic shined a light on a lot of those problems of like, oh yeah, maybe that was a problem. Maybe we should look at fixing that whenever we get a chance, right? But when you're doing it, sometimes it's hard to, you miss the forest for the trees. You're too busy planning the event to realize that, oh wait, we probably could have done that better. A lot of these organizers, they've been sitting idle for 18 months. So they've had a lot of time to think about how to do it better.
Let me say this, Jason. I don't want to, there's this tendency, especially from tech attendees. I hate them to death because they go to these events and they start picking on the planners and the organizers of these events.
Sure.
Honestly, the tech audiences are I have consulted on a number of tech events, like major tech events. And it's the toughest audience because like they immediately go crying over Twitter. Like as soon as they the coffee's like a little bit cold, they start these threads with thousands of people bashing planners. Event planning was the fifth most stressful job pre-pandemic for 10 years in a row, right?
Wow.
So after firefighters and pilots and whatever. You can only imagine during the pandemic, these people actually, I want to extend this invitation to all of your audience as well. On October 12th, as part of Hopin, the event we're doing an event called Event Minded to really talk about the mental piece for event planners, which have been completely destroyed by the past year and a half. What I've seen in terms of loss of business, it's heart-wrenching. So there's a big piece there. So far from me to pick on the planners and say, oh, you got to do this, you got to do that. My message is now is the time to experiment. And you gotta get a pass if you experiment now, because it's a post-pandemic, still uncertainty. So you can try things now. So now is the time to really create and do new things and make mistakes. No problem at all. Nobody's gonna pick on you, I believe, if they're sensible enough. So yeah, I want to get that message across because these people it's been crazy what they had to go through.
It's true, and we can't talk about names or anything like that because I don't want to call anybody out. But I know some of the really big trade show organizers are going through serious downsizing. So you're 100% right. We don't want to pick on them. Last 18 months has been brutal for most organizers. So we're already out of time.
I know
it happens every time, Julius.
We need an hour.
We need an hour probably. Yeah. So let's do this again, maybe in another couple months. And Of course, I would love to hear more about kind of your hop-in journey.
Sure.
That's definitely the big player that everybody's following. What's Hopin going to do? What's blah blah blah. So would love to hear more about that. And thank you as always for your insights. You are a true expert in this field. So I always enjoy getting a chance to just hear you talk. So
Appreciate
thanks for
it.
being
Thanks
on the
for
show
having
again.
me.
Man.
Thanks for having me. Always a pleasure to spend time with you guys.
Absolutely. You too. So let's do it again. And to our audience, thanks so much for tuning in. And until next time, have a good one. Take care.